customer feedback is a really, really important voice for us to hear because they're using our product or our service all the time. And when you collect all of it and you centralize it and you institutionalize it and you democratize it, you give everyone across the company the access to this information, it just changes the way you operate as a business.
So if you're scaling a B2B company, you know it can be hard to stay close to the customer. The more layers that come between you and them as you scale, it becomes more difficult to stay in touch with how they are using your service and how you can use their feedback for growth. So today's guest is Eli Portnoy, founder CEO of Backengine.ai, and we're going to talk about this problem and offer a tangible solution at the end. So welcome to the show, Eli.
Thank you so much for having me. It's fantastic to get to chat with you.
Yes, it's going to be good. I think I'm a big believer in customer feedback because I'm a marketer and I know that the more you talk to your customers, the more things you learn. It's one thing about telling your customers what they need to know from your perspective, but also listening to them is a helpful thing too. So excited about this. To kick off this conversation, I think we should start with the why, this why question. If you're growing a company and you haven't paid much attention to getting feedback from your customers, then you're probably asking this question of, well, why should we? Right. So I think, Eli, will you quickly bring us up to speed as to why people should be doing this, and then we can kind of get into how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first answer is because we've quantified the fact that collecting customer feedback actually leads to materially better outcomes across almost every dimension of the business, from win rates, growth rates, retention, customer retention, and so on and so forth. But I'd say that um, the less analytical answer is that if you're a small company and you're starting to grow, chances are the reason that you've been able to grow is because by very nature of being a small company, the founder, the CEO has probably had to spend a lot of times with customers. They've had to sign up the first few customers. They've probably stayed very engaged with them. And so organically, even without trying, you've been hearing from the customer. You've been identifying their pain points. You've been listening to how they talk about the product and how you can potentially attract new customers. You've been doing all of that organically. And the problem is that as you get bigger, those things that you were doing organically stop working. And you need to start building process and systems to make sure that that continues to happen. Otherwise, that advantage that maybe you didn't think too hard about and you just got because you were a small company is going to start to wane. And a lot of the things that
Mhm.
were easy that led to the growth that you've had are going to disappear. And so that's why it makes sense to really invest and think about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have lots of stories I could tell about this, just because I'm close to it due to the nature of what we're doing on the signal media side. But I think, from one company to another, if you're a SaaS B2B company or your service, um, you get feedback in different ways. But generally, like you're saying, it happens at that first stage is you're very connected to the customer because you need to get revenue flowing. So it's kind of natural and organic. But as things start to scale, you can get disconnected from those conversations because you have other team members there. You're right; systems are now need to be put in place. But I know you were mentioning on our pre-call you have a benchmark study you did with B2B SaaS companies. Um, Tell us a little bit about that, and I think that will help us get to a answer to this question of why.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did is we interviewed 150 B2B businesses and we asked two sets of questions. The first set of questions was around how they currently collect customer feedback. So are they running NPS surveys or CSAT surveys? How often are different executives talking to customers? Is there an owner? Are they recording video calls? Things of that nature. And just try to understand how mature are they. And the second set of questions were all about performance. So we asked them about their growth rates, their um, net revenue retention. We asked them about their competitive win rates and how what their deal cycles looked like. We asked all sorts of different questions around performance. And then we took that data and we looked to see if there was a correlation. Were companies that were investing more and more mature in collecting feedback doing better? And the answer was a very resounding yes. They were across almost every dimension. And it was almost a perfect linear correlation. The more they invested, the more they focused on it, the more they cared about customer feedback, the better they did. To the point where companies that were collecting feedback in the most advanced way possible were outcompeting their competitors 6.5 times more than companies that were not taking it seriously. So very dramatic outcomes.
Yeah, that's amazing. As you're talking, I'm thinking about the different impact, the different levels of impact you can have from customer feedback. And one I think that comes to mind is you've got something rolling and you're looking to roll out something new. Maybe it's something innovative, something your team came up with, but it's you can't say if we build it they will come, even if you have existing users. They may not care about it, right? We love our new ideas, but sometimes they're dogs and they need to be shot, right? um, I think that that's one place. The other part is looking at your current infrastructure, and one that's like one that's in my mind is sales. You mentioned the sales cycle. There are places and points in your company and your the way that you're going to market that can be tweaked. Simple tweaks can mean 2 3 10x revenue. I mean, not revenue, but conversions at different parts in the funnel. These are big changes in the course of growing and scaling a company that have huge impact, and it's all just from listening in. Um, is that what you've been seeing?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about customer feedback is the customer is a really, really important voice for us to hear because they're using our product or our service all the time. And typically, if you have a big enough customer base, they're also representative of what the broader like the broader world looks like. And so it's where
Mhm,
your next customers are going to come from. And the customers, what we found is that when they talk to us, they tell us a lot of really important things. They tell us what pain point they need solving for. They tell us how they talk about the pain point and what messaging resonates with them. They talk about what part of the service or product is working, what part isn't. They tell us about the things that they'd want us to be able to do for them. They give us testimonials without even thinking about it when they tell us how much they like something. They're constantly just giving us a wealth of information that is helpful to pretty much every function in a business. And the problem is most people are not capturing it, and most
mhm,
people, if they are capturing anecdotally. And so
mhm,
what we found is when you collect all of it and you centralize it and you institutionalize it and you democratize it, you give everyone across the company the access to this information, it just changes the way you operate as a business. All of a sudden, marketing is using it to figure out what copy they should use and how to message things and what channels they should be using to advertise, and they start running copy against it to figure out how will people respond to it, and then product and it looks at it to understand what features are working and where they're bugs and what they should build next and where there are potential revenue opportunities, and sales and customer success start using it to build account plans and understand churn risk and basically figure out who's in a good place and who's not. And executives start to think about the market and how it's changing and how customers are talking about it and what competitors are emerging and what potential threats there are and what their strengths are relative to the market. And it just starts changing the need, because at the end of the day, we're in this game, like we're building businesses to serve customers. And if we can listen to what those customers say, that's like a cheat code that helps us make everything better and makes us operate better. So it's just an incredibly important thing. And I just don't know that in terms of just like how businesses have operated in the past, if we've given it enough value, if we've thought about it enough, because before the advent of large language models, it was impossible to capture all of this information,
mhm.
which is so unstructured in any way that let us do anything with. And so the best thing that we had were surveys, and that's so limiting, and we weren't able to do so much with it, and so we kind of just like discarded it. But we live in a new world now where accessing this information is possible and it's powerful, and not doing it, I think, is a real mistake.
So in the sales world, they have this term called turning the knife, where you've demonstrated the pain and you just sort of go a little bit deeper, right? Just to
Yeah.
emphasize before you go for the close. Let's do that real quick. Before we get to the actual solution, because we're kind of edging up on that solution with founders that are going into their second stage of growth and they're scaling up, they're building systems, they're hiring people, they're doing all these things is creating a different dynamic inside the company as they grow. Where are the frustrations that they find for um, actually accessing their customer base and getting that feedback? Like where are they having trouble doing this?
Yeah, it manifests itself in a bunch of places. So the most obvious one is I can share a story. So my first company, this was a prior company. We were building all sorts of products, and every time we would roll out a product, customers would love it, and we would get all this great feedback, and it was awesome. And we started to grow, and all of a sudden, we had this idea for a product, and we spent all this time. I think it was like 6 or 9 months building this thing, and we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on design agencies to make it perfect, and then we launched it, and absolutely no one cared. No one cared. There was zero usage. And it was like this shocking moment for us. Like, how is it possible that we were so wrong? And why had we never been wrong before? Turns out the answer was super obvious. We were wrong because we like had an idea in our own little ivory tower, and we thought it would resonate because we thought we were so smart, but it didn't resonate because customers didn't really care. And in the past, that never happened because every one of our decisions was rooted in an understanding of what our customers needed. And so it was the first time that we had distance. What I find all of the time, and this is just one example, right? Product is one example, but it happens across the board. Big companies consistently miss, and they miss because they're not listening to their customer, because their customers are saying things, but there's no way to capture it. And so what happens is companies start dealing in anecdotes. Someone talks to a customer, they hear something, and all of a sudden, like, this becomes the holy grail, and it starts driving all these decisions. And then you go and find out that it's actually just one squeaky wheel that said it, not your entire customer base.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start to see misses on the marketing side and misses on the executive side. You see acquisitions that happen that make no sense, that customers don't care about. You see product stuff that doesn't work. You see bugs that start creeping up, and then all of a sudden customers start churning. You're like, why didn't we fix this? Well, we didn't know it was such a big deal. Yeah, we'd heard about it, but we thought it was just like this one-off thing. You just see like a deterioration in how a company operates because there's just so much disconnect between the people who are ultimately buying what we're selling and the rest of the company and how we think about building stuff. So it's to answer your question very directly, like, where is that knife? That knife is everywhere. It's also why it just feels like bigger companies just operate worse than smaller companies.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we don't have alignment around what actually matters and a clear North Star about how to drive it. And customers are that North Star.
So classically, you have what modes of collecting customer data, right? You have humans reporting in a meeting, maybe a Slack channel where someone will raise a question that came up from a customer. You have all the sales engagement where salespeople, may or may not tell you what happened at the pitch or the meeting. Um, how a presentation went, what was the body language like. There's a lot of like kind of tried and true steps, like pieces of the funnel, just from the sales and marketing side of it. From the customer side of it, you have CS that's working with the customers on a day-to-day basis, so they're going to have maybe a little bit more data that's actionable if a human does something with it. Voices their observation, but that takes a very insightful kind of critical thinker to look at the data and say, they're not actively asking questions of that data. What are some other ways? I mean, it seems like when we look back at the way it's been done, it's very archaic now that we have AI. But how were teams doing it before, obviously, your product or products like yours?
Yeah, I mean, the typical ways are basically, so there's anecdotal and ad hoc ways, which is a person talks to a customer, they hear an idea, they put it in a Slack channel, they put it in an Excel spreadsheet, they put
Mhm.
it into a CRM, and it basically goes there to die.
Yeah.
And tons of stuff gets missed and not enough context gets captured. That's one way. The second way is I hear something and it becomes part of tribal knowledge. Like, I share it with
Yeah.
someone, and someone else shares it, and there you have all sorts of issues where it's like mostly the squeaky wheels that are generating a lot of the noise, and you have certain people on the team who are louder than others, so that kind of rises to the top, and people can add their own layers of translation to stuff, and so all of a sudden you've got like this tribal knowledge where everyone thinks something, but it's not necessarily rooted in any form of reality.
Mhm.
To me, that's the most dangerous. And then you have the more programmatic ways of capturing feedback that are still pretty archaic. So that would be surveys like NPS and CSATs. That would be things like customer advisory boards. That
Mhm.
would be things where people are making the effort, but just because
Mhm.
of the lack of tooling and technology, it really is a very limited view into the world. So
Yeah, I
that would
think
be how it's traditionally been done.
Yeah, I think someone the highest level, which I don't think a lot of companies are even doing this, is having someone own that effort through an NPS score or something like that. Just owning it and saying we're going to do this intentionally is a lot of companies aren't even there. So if they're not even there, then hey, that's great. Just skip that step and go to the AI version of this because you need to have someone own it, but what ownership looks like now is probably a lot different because the tools are different. um, am I off base by saying that?
No, I think you're 100% right. So I have a lot of thoughts on this because in the survey, we asked companies who owns customer feedback. And the first thing that was really shocking to me is 23% of companies said no one owns it. So you're talking about like the most important, the reason why your company exists as a customer and no one owns actually hearing them. That's really, really bad. Those companies significantly underperform.
Mhm.
The the second categories of owners that we heard. So CS was the biggest at 53%. Now, when we dug in a little bit deeper, what we found was that customer success is not really an owner because we should define what ownership means. Ownership means that you are responsible for it or accountable for it, and you have the resources to do something about it. And what we found was when someone was the owner, it's just customer success talks to customers the most. And so by default, they're the owners, but it's not something that they're hired on, gold on, measured on, held accountable to. It's just something that they do because they're talking to customers all the time. Their real job is to expand those customers, to keep them happy, to stop them from churning. And so it's a kind of a de facto responsibility, which is not really ownership. But even with that sort of like halfway ownership, those companies that had CS own customer feedback outperformed any other group. You know what group was the worst performing if they owned it? It was product. And
Mm,
that sounds counterintuitive,
it
except if
does,
you
yeah.
think about it, the way product collects customer feedback is through surveys and through customer advisory boards. And those are disconnected ways of getting that customer feedback. They're not actually talking to customers all that often, whereas CSC is. So even though like you have effectively an owner, and maybe it's slightly better because it has to be more of their job responsibility than CS, which is kind of just de facto, but they're so disconnected from the customer and they're collecting it in such a disconnected way that it ends up being a negative for the company to have someone who's disconnected from the customer now own the voice of the customer. So I thought that was really interesting. But I do agree with you. Like anything in business, if you want to drive success, you have to first establish an owner. That's step number one. Even if that's all you do, that's better than doing nothing. Then you need to give them the resources and the tooling so that they can do it well. And if you really care about it, that's when you start to see magic happen. You have an owner and you've empowered them to go and actually do something about it and bring them the tools they need. And then all of a sudden, like feedback starts to really flow and impact all parts of the organization.
So I feel like we've really outlined the problem significantly. So let's move to the solution. I think you've got an interesting product here, and I want you to talk about it. I'm going to share my screen and share just your website that I'm looking at here as you're
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are three components to our solution. The first is we connect to the tools that companies use to talk to customers. So if you're talking to customers on email, we connect email. If you're talking to them through support tickets, we connect to those. If you're having video calls with them, we connect there. If you're using Slack, we connect there. And the point is we're able to pull in systematically all of the things that customers are saying to you. Step number one. Step number two is we use large language models to analyze every single interaction, categorize it, understand it, and then centralize it so that we end up giving you a single place, like a source of truth for all the things your customers are saying. And what that does is it lets you then have a single place where all of your team can go to understand what those customers are saying and how it relates to their team. So product can come in and understand what are the big features that are being asked for, what are the bugs that are blocking customers, where are people getting stuck. Customer success can understand what are the main questions that are coming up, what are the top reasons for churn. Marketing can understand what messages are resonating, how do
Mhm.
customers talk about it in their own language, so on and so forth. And then the last piece is we give each team a set of tools to use all of this context to help make their jobs easier and more effective. So if you're a customer success manager and you're building an account plan, in a prior world, you'd have to go into 4 different systems to find out all the things that customer has said and what you've talked to them about. With Backengine, you have it all centralized, and we give you tools to then be able to automatically build out that first version of the account plan or that first version of the QBR. And if you're a product manager, not only do we help you understand what features customers are talking about, but we help you infuse that directly into the tickets that you're creating and directly into the PRDs that you're building. And so we make you more efficient and help you get to better outcomes dramatically faster and easier.
Well, that's good because I would think that the big problem that your customers would still have, even utilizing a tool like this, and it's the big problem that a lot of people have using ChatGPT, honestly, is having the right questions to ask of the data, right? Which
Yeah.
is probably a big reason why they never ask for customer feedback with this tools historically. I mean, big piece of it's no one owning it to find those questions, but yeah, I think that's the very you're basically you're providing them this tool that does this amazing thing, and then you're providing them the support to help them understand how to use it and get the most from it.
Yeah, we found that the hard way. Speaking of talking to customers, when we first started, we thought about it in the context of like a chat GPT style interface where you could just ask questions and we could answer. And there is a lot of value in that. But we also found that people don't always know where to begin. It's very
Right.
hard to operationalize that. There's
Yeah.
so many different things you could do. So we actually built out role by role, very specific use cases and tools to actually like build out those use cases. So we know that from our customers, they constantly tell us that one of the primary questions they have is, why are customers churning? What are the root causes? So we have an entire module that you just click a button and it analyzes all of your data and helps you answer that specific question. We also know that the one of the big things that sales teams are constantly looking at is win-loss analysis. So it's a push button analysis. We know that product teams are constantly trying to understand like where are customers getting stuck, where do I need more documentation, push button analysis. And so that's really where we've taken the product, and that's why we didn't stop at phase 2, which is just centralizing, consolidating all the data, but making it really easy to operationalize and turn into the ultimate work product that you're trying to deliver.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's where the all the real value is for your customer base is helping them get the most from the tool. Now, does everything centralize in all the data centralize inside of Backengine.ai as a central point, or is it in another tool if they're choosing?
Both. So we do have backengine.ai and the data lives there, but we also can push it anywhere that the customer wants. So most of our customers have us pushing this data into Salesforce or into
Mhm.
HubSpot and into Slack and into the places that they're already living. Because and it's in our name. The reason we called ourselves Back Engine is because what we want to do is we want to power things, but we don't necessarily want you to have another tool that you have to go to. We want to power wherever you're already working. And so if you're a product manager that's living in Jira and you're a customer success manager that's living in HubSpot and you're a marketer that's in Slack, we want to push this stuff there so that you're um, interacting with it in a very organic way that doesn't take you out of your system.
Yeah. Do you have any examples of? I know I saw you have some case studies, companies you've done this for, and maybe use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are lots and lots and lots of them. And one of the beautiful things for us, and this speaks to one of the use cases, is in a previous life in a different company, when we'd have a customer say something nice about it, about us, we like it would get said, and then it would almost certainly get lost forever, and we'd never have it. And so when we wanted to go build case studies, it was really hard because we had to pull the CS team and we had to pull different folks and say like, who do you think would be a good one? And then we'd go and have a chat with them and we'd say like, hey, we've heard that you've really enjoyed the product, like what have you enjoyed? And we try to build a case study. Now it's super easy. Anytime someone says anything nice about us, it automatically triggers a notification to me, so I know, first of all, it makes me feel really good,
Yeah.
but also it gives me an opportunity to understand how are they using it in a powerful way, and is this potentially a case study? And then if I see something good enough, I can basically go into our tool and say, hey, if I were to write a case study for this customer, what would it look like? It builds out a draft, and then I just reach out to them. I'm like, hey, I've seen from your usage that this is how you're using it. We built out a draft case study. What do you think? Are you comfortable with us sharing this? And most of the time, like, that's so cool. Yeah, of course, go for it.
Hmm.
And so it become very easy for us to have lots of case studies. So that's one of them that we personally use, and that's been really helpful. We have a customer that told us that they were basically they built this little thing. It was just a throwaway piece of functionality as part of their core product, and they started to see in back engine that most of the requests they were getting were around this little piece. And so they went out and actually like turned it into a product, and it's become a massive component of their revenue stream. It's become a huge upsell for them, and it was something that they never thought about as a potential product. So just having that feedback led them to understanding that this was something that they needed to go build out. Similarly, we have another customer, and I'll stop here with examples unless you want more. But
No, that's great.
they they had a customer churn, and they were completely blindsided by it. And they looked back, and they had this system where they were basically assessing the risk of every account using just basically like common sense and saying, is this, high risk, medium risk, low risk? And this account had been low risk the entire time until all of a sudden they got a churn email. And they were devastated by that. And so what they've done now is, instead of having their people on the team basically create the risk profile, we create it for them, and it's completely unbiased, and it's completely systematic, and it's consistent across all their accounts. And they get alerted if it changes from lowest risk to medium risk. And so they have tons of visibility, and they can build an action plan with, by the way, they build that account plan directly in our system. And that's how they're reducing churn dramatically.
It's amazing. Um, the second example you gave me this thought of CRO, conversion rate optimization. Those people who are in that field, I would think that they would love this tool.
Hope so. So far they seem to be. It's been fun to build out.
I mean,
the
because they're getting transparency where they don't have it currently. I mean, they have aggregated data that they can look at, but to have AI connected to it and with the support of your team helping them understand how to use it, it seems like it would be a game changer for the CRO people out there
I definitely think so. It's
and
definitely
product
been a
and
game
product
changer.
marketers. Even though you said product is, they're not really attaching as, I don't know. What were you saying about product marketers? How are product marketers using it? Are they using it?
They are. They're using it a lot to when they launch new products to
Mhm.
figure out how to talk about it, how to express it, what messaging is resonating, where people have confusion, where they need additional like materials and guidance. We um, we also see that once a product gets launched, product marketers are using us to track how it's doing, and like how often customers are actually talking about it, and whether
Yeah.
there's uptake around it. So yeah, no, product marketers are definitely one of our core use cases.
How does this work with getting reviews? I know, testimonials and case studies and those kind of things are great. And it's amazing you could build those. But I know like some SaaS products, they want to have a lot of reviews on certain tech stack platforms or
Yeah.
even Google, right? How does that work?
Well, so the easiest way is to, whenever you get a testimonial, to immediately email them and say, hey, by the way, I saw you said something really nice about us. Would you mind saying this on XYZ site, and just putting it up there? So it becomes a trigger
Hmm.
to know when someone is happy, and to hit them up immediately, and not wait for like a bug to show up or something to happen, but just immediately trigger an email, let them know, here's the link, please, we'd really appreciate it.
And so how far reaching is your tool? Like would you guys actually take that, find it, take it, it fits certain criteria, create an email and send it, or just pushing it to someone to create the email to send?
Yeah, right now we would push it to someone. So we push it to like the marketing analyst, who
Mhm.
would then trigger the email. We can build webhooks so that you can then, like, if you have a system where you would send it from, that it would trigger it. But like, we end at letting you know that this testimonial happened.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would think that this could go on and on, as
Yeah.
far reaching in their company as they would let you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
I think it's like almost like an operating system at some point. Like, that's the
yeah,
vision
right,
we have.
right, yeah, I totally can see that. But with the support of people, helping you understand how to use it, that's the key piece, I think. because it's not really as valuable unless that you can see you see the insight into how to deploy it, because you don't see data as insights. You have to know the question to ask to see the insight in the data. So that's the I think the gold piece there. Um, as we're wrapping up here, tell people a little bit about your background. I know that true to form for this show, we have a lot of founder CEOs on that have built lots of companies, exited, et cetera. You've got a little bit of that in your pedigree. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, I've been building B2B startups for the last 15 years. I started my career at Amazon and learned how to build consumer products. I think at one of the great companies, and just learned a tremendous amount, but had this incredible itch to build stuff. And so um, I tried my hand at it, started a company called ThinkNear in the mobile advertising space. We caught a lot of like very significant tailwinds, and we were very lucky to get acquired about 18 months after inception. Spend 2 years at the acquiring company, learning more about how to scale businesses and how to operate at just a completely different level. Started to see the problem that we're ultimately solving now at Backengine, but ended up getting very excited about big data and all of the new digital data streams that were starting to come up, and kind of saw that in mobile advertising we were seeing all sorts of interesting location data, and that there were all these credit card and debit card data sets that were being created, and built a company to try and take all that data and turn it into real-time dashboards that big enterprises could use to understand their customer. Um, didn't have quite the same amount of tailwind on that one. That was a harder business to build. We had to really grind it out, and we spent 6 years building that business. And were acquired by Medallia, which is a voice of the customer company, which sends out surveys to different consumers in 2020, and joined them and spent a couple of years there. Learned a tremendous amount about um, surveys, but also about voice of the customer and how important it is, and how well it works in B2C businesses, sorry, but how poorly it works in B2B businesses. And
Mhm.
then ended up starting Backengine to solve the problem I had experienced at both ThinkNear and Sense 360, where I really couldn't hear my customer after we got to a certain scale, and using a lot of the lessons that I'd learned at Medallia about voice of the customer, um, and some of the lessons I learned at Sense 360 around big data and machine learning and all of that, and put it all together to start Backengine, and that's where we are right now.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, I think that the B2C, B2B thing is interesting because I see B2B as always lagging a little bit from B2C. They don't have the insights as quickly as real time as B2C. So you have longer sales cycles and communication cycles. So anytime anyone can take something from B2C world and implement it in B2B, is they're going to win. I think if it's a good, if it's something that people actually want. But hey, thanks for coming on. This is such a great conversation. I'm glad to share, spread the word on your tool and your company and what you guys are doing. Um, if people want to reach out to you and get connected and learn more, where should they go and how do they get connected with you?
Yeah, so our website is backengine.ai, and they can always reach out to me at eli@backengine.ai. And yeah, I'd love to hear from folks. And thank you so much for having me, Lee. This was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's fun. We'll have to have you back. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Would love that. Thank you.